welcome to the Football Philosophy channel, and tonight it's United versus Istanbul Basaksehir at Old Trafford, 8 o'clock kickoff. Really looking forward to it. It's turned into a massive game, this. I didn't expect to be saying that after we'd beaten PSG and beaten Leipzig in the first two games. Obviously winning those two games, I thoroughly expected United to go to Istanbul and pick up the 3 points against Basaksehir in Turkey. No disrespect to Basaksehir, but they are supposedly the weakest team in the group, and we've beaten the other two teams. Had we beaten Basaksehir, had we done our job in Turkey, we would now be sitting here with 9 points, and with 9 points the likelihood is that we would qualify by taking one more point from our last 3 games. But obviously it's not that situation now. We've got 6 points out of 9 instead, so we still need another 4. So obviously even though we've beaten Leipzig once and comfortably in the end, make no mistake about that game, they collapsed in the last 20 minutes. I know we made a lot of subs. People think it was down to the subs. It wasn't down to the subs. They started throwing people forward, and really they left themselves open at the back in the last 20 minutes because we were a goal up. And we beat them 5-0 in the end. But as Ole Gunnar Solskjaers said on the night, that was never a 5-0 game. If I was to say it was even for 70 minutes, I'd be doing Leipzig a disservice. I think they were slightly the better side for the first 70 minutes. We happened to get a good goal by Mason Greenwood on one of only a couple of chances that we had in that 70 minutes. You know, at times during that first 70 minutes, it was all hands to the pumps for United. And, we managed to be in the lead. And as I say, at the end, they started throwing too many men forward, left themselves open at the back. We ended up winning 5-0, which was unbelievable. But still, it happened. So we've beaten them 5-0. Brilliant win in Paris, 2-1 against PSG. But as I was saying, because we've beaten those two teams, there's no doesn't mean one little bit that will necessarily beat them again, or that will necessarily even get a point off them next time. They're going to be really hard games, and we could easily lose both of those games. If we lose both of those games, we'll probably end up going out of it. No matter what happens tonight, I don't think we'll be able to afford to lose both of those games. So we need the 3 points tonight. Drastically need the 3 points tonight. A draw's no good. If we get the 3 points tonight, 1 point from our last two games should do it, and that might just be as much as we can get from our last 2 games. 1 point, you never know. I mean, obviously we could do better, but it wouldn't surprise me if we drew with Paris, say, at home, and maybe got beat in Leipzig. It wouldn't surprise me one little bit. So we're desperate for the 3 points tonight. Didn't expect it to be such a big game, but it is a massive game. Yesterday, I named the team that I thought Ole will go with on the show yesterday. At the end of the show today, I'm going to give the team that I'd like him to pick, which will be slightly different from what I think he will pick. But what I've done is I've looked at the newspapers, and I've chosen 4 different outlets and looked at the teams that they've predicted. And I'm going to go through the 4 outlets, and I'm going to name the team that they think Ole will select, and I'm going to say what I think is wrong with each one of them, and which one I think is the worst and which one I think is the best. I've gone through 4 outlets, but 2 of them have named exactly the same lineup, so I don't know if there's any information out there that other people haven't got. But to me, it's the weakest of the 3 teams that have been chosen by 4 different outlets. The Evening Standard and the Manchester Evening News have both gone with the exact same team, and they think the team will be Henderson in goal. They think it'll be Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Tuanzebe and Telles at the back. I assume they might have some inside information. I know it was rumoured that, it was said that Lindelof had a back problem at the weekend, but he did complete the full 90 minutes. So I'm not sure whether Lindelof will play tonight. Maybe they know that he's not going to. I don't really know. But as I say, the Evening Standard and the Manchester Evening News have gone with a back 4 of Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Tuanzebe and Telles. Then they've just got one player. Probably they're thinking that'll be the holding role for McTominay. There's no Fred and no Matic, and anybody who watches regularly will know that I always say that 2 of those 3 players have to play. So I'm not happy that they've both only gone with McTominay. And then they've got Bruno and Van der Beek both in the side. I'm not sure that's going to work. Bruno and Van der Beek, at weekend, Van der Beek was drifting in field when he was supposed to play on the right when he came on as a sub. And Van der Beek and Bruno both ended up looking to receive the ball in the same areas. Didn't really work well. I don't fancy Van der Beek and Bruno starting in the same lineup again. And, well, I say again, it was only for 15 minutes the other day. And then up top, they've got Rashford, Cavani and Greenwood. So to recap, this is the Evening Standard and the Manchester Evening News. I've gone with Henderson, Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Tuanzebe and Telles, McTominay, Bruno and Van der Beek, and then up top, Rashford, Cavani and Greenwood. Right, if Cavani gets his start tonight, which I hope he does, it'll be a disaster for him if he's flanked by Rashford and Greenwood. It will be an absolute disaster. Now then, I've stuck my neck out. I've said what I think. Football's a funny old game. It could be that we happen to get a goal in the first minute. They might have to start coming out. No matter which team we pick, we might end up winning 4-0. It could happen. So I'll end up with egg on my face. That can happen. I appreciate that in a game of football, unusual things can happen. So we could end up winning no matter what team. We could end up winning comfortably no matter what team you pick. You know, who would have thought Aston Villa would have beat Liverpool 7-1 or 7-2, whatever it was, earlier in the season. So no matter what team we pick, it can happen. My argument is, if that was our front three on a regular basis, it'd be terrible. And I'll tell you why. Cavani is a striker who needs chances creating for him. He needs good players around him who are looking to give him the ball and create chances for him in and around the penalty area. Mason Greenwood, when he plays on the right, is forever trying to cut in and have shots with his left foot. And Marcus Rashford, when he plays on the left, is forever cutting in from the left and trying to have shots with his right foot. When you're picking your team, it's not just about selecting who you think are the good players. It's about the chemistry of what each player will require from the players around him. And Cavani, if he's flanked by Rashford and Greenwood, will find that there's a lack of creativity. They're all strikers, really. None of them are really wingers. None of them really put dangerous balls into the box, or not very often. So I think Cavani will be starved of chances, and I think there'll be more shots from Rashford and Greenwood than there would be from Cavani. And Cavani needs to get a start as a number 9 with players who are looking to feed him in, looking to get balls into the box for him. So I don't fancy Cavani starting with Rashford and Greenwood. As I say, I'll cover myself. Tonight, it could work. It could just happen. We might beat them 6-0. Anything can happen in a game of football. As I've just mentioned, nobody would have had Villa getting 7 against Liverpool. So anything can happen. So you don't need to come back at me tonight if that is the lineup and say, well, it did work. We got 4 goals. Doesn't matter. If we use that team on a regular basis with Cavani at 9 and Greenwood and Rashford on the flanks, it'll be a disaster going forward. So that team that the Evening Standard have gone with Bruno and Van der Beek, for me, both competing to get into the same spaces in the number 10 role, and then Cavani flanked by Greenwood and Rashford. I think that's the worst team out of the 3 teams that I'm going to read out, and that's the Evening Standard and the Manchester Evening News. My second choice team is a toss-up between my second choice and my first choice. It really is tight, but the Independent I've placed in second. The Independent I've gone with the same goalkeeper and back 4, Henderson, Wan-Bissaka, Tuanzebe, Maguire and Telles. In fact, nobody's got Lindelof in the team, so maybe they're just assuming he'll get a rest because he had a back problem at the weekend, or maybe they just think Tuanzebe's ready for the game. So Henderson, Wan-Bissaka, Tuanzebe, Maguire and Telles. Again, they've only gone with the one solid midfield player, or proper midfield player as I call them. They've got McTominay. Again, like the other 2 outlets, the Evening Standard and the Manchester Evening News, they've got Van der Beek and Fernandes both in the side. I'm not keen about them both playing in the same team. I'm really not. But all 3 of them have gone with Van der Beek and Fernandes. But then up front, the Independent, this is better. This is the bit that's better. It's the only bit that's different. They've got Cavani, but they've got him flanked by Dan James and Marshall. Now, I know a lot of people will say, oh, you're not picking Dan James in front of Greenwood and Rashford. It's just the style of the player. Dan James, at least, will be trying to get to the line and get balls into the box for Cavani. That's what he tries to do. It's the type of thing that he does. I've seen him do it brilliantly for Wales. He created a great goal. He put another great ball across the other day. Sorry to have to mention a Welsh game, but it was against Finland, I think, who'd won in Paris recently, by the way. So, not a terrible outfit. And he also put a brilliant ball across that Gareth Bale should have scored from. So these are the type of balls that Cavani feeds off. These are the type of balls that Dan James at least will be trying to provide. That's the type of player Cavani will need to be playing with. And then it's got, obviously, Marshall on the left. And although Marshall is also brilliant at cutting in, and shooting from the edge of the box or just inside the box, he's also very smart, Marshall. He sees little short passes, and I think he linked up quite well with Cavani a few times at the weekend in the short time that Cavani was on. So I think that team, there's only differences. It's got James and Marshall on the flanks as opposed to Rashford and Greenwood. But I think that team is much better balanced and has got a better chance. So the independent suggested lineup I have put at number 2, in front of the Evening Standard and the Manchester Evening News. And the one that I've placed at number 1 is the United Report. The United Report. Same back 4, same keeper. They've all gone with Henderson, Wan-Bissaka, Tuanzebe, Maguire and Telles. The United Report have gone with McTominay and Fred. Now, obviously, that is Ole's preferred pairing in central midfield. I think he actually will go with that. I think the United Report also think that that's what he'll go with just because it's his favoured pairing. So I agree with that, and it makes us a bit stronger. People think it's defensive. It's not necessarily defensive. It's about winning the ball back in there. When we lose the ball, we want to win it back quickly, and we want to try and win it back in their half. So it's not about these players being behind the ball and defending just outside their own box. It's about us keeping the pressure on them. So it's equally an attacking move as it is a defensive move. It's about keeping the ball in their half of the field for as long a period as possible every time we get it, and also winning it back as quickly as possible every time we lose it. So McTominay and Fred, the United Report have gone with as the central midfield pairing. They've also gone with Van der Beek and Bruno. So every outlet that I've looked at has all got Van der Beek and Bruno. For me, it's time to give Van der Beek a run out in Bruno's position rather than both of them trying to compete for space in the middle of that field. But they've got Van der Beek and Bruno. But I've just gone with this United Report ever so slightly in front of the Independent because they've got McTominay and Fred in it, which I think is important. Or McTominay and Matic, but McTominay and Fred they've gone with. I don't mind that. But they've got Van der Beek and Bruno. Then they've got Cavani and Marshall up front. So they've not got, as the MEN and the Evening Standard have got Greenwood and Rashford. They've got neither of those in. And also these have not got Dan James in, as the Independent have picked Dan James on one flank. So it might not be quite as creative. People might say, what, Dan James creative? I just mean someone who's literally trying to get the ball across the box. That's what Cavani wants. It's what Cavani feeds off. So as much as I agree with the Independent having Dan James in, the United Report have got McTominay and Fred in, which I think is probably even more important. We need to keep the ball in their half for as long as we possibly can. So the United Report, if I was to choose between the 4 outlets, Evening Standard, Independent, Manchester Evening News and the United Report, I would go with the United Report, who have gone with Henderson, Wan-Bissaka, Tuanzebe, Maguire, Telles, McTominay and Fred, Van der Beek and Bruno, and Cavani and Marshall. That's probably the slightly better outlook than out of the 4 of them. Personally, I don't mind Henderson getting a start. I don't mind that back 4. I'm hoping that Lindelof's fit. I hope it's just a rumour that he's going to be missing, that they've picked up on. I'd sooner have the usual back 4. Obviously, Shaw's missing, injured. But I'd sooner have Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, Maguire and Telles. I'd give McTominay and Matic a chance as a pairing in the middle. But I'd accept McTominay and Fred. And I would go with Van der Beek at number 10. Cavani at number 9. Juan Mata's clearly going to get a rest. I would like Matas to start on the right again and Marshall on the left. but I'll settle for Dan James on the right and Marshall on the left. And I think Cavani would get a little bit of joy if he was, he'd get more joy if he's flanked by either Dan James or Juan Mata and Anthony Marshall. So that's what I'd go with. No matter what team he picks, if any of these outlets are right or if I'm right, yesterday I named what I actually thought he'd pick. Whether he pick, whichever team he picks, it's vitally important that we get this win tonight. Vitally important that we move on to 9 points. If we move on to 9 points, a point would do us. Almost certainly, a point would do us in the last 2 games. I made a little error yesterday in my calculations. I mentioned yesterday that the different results that we needed, and I've had a rethink about it. The result, if we win tonight, we don't mind if there's a result in the other game. It doesn't matter if PSG win or if Leipzig win. The only result we don't want, I've decided in the end, we do not want it to be a draw. If it's a draw, Leipzig move on to 7, PSG move on to 4. If that happens, we would need a point off PSG. A point off Leipzig wouldn't necessarily do it because PSG could still get to 10. We might, and if PSG got to 10, that would mean they'd beat us, which means we would remain on 10 with a point off Leipzig. So a point off Leipzig wouldn't be quite enough for us. PSG beating us 2-0 at Old Trafford would put PSG through if we only got a point off Leipzig, and you expect them to both beat Basaksehir. So the only result we don't want tonight is a draw. If the result tonight is a win for either team, then in our last 2 games, a point off either team would be enough. So the last thing we want tonight in the other game is a draw. I hope you've enjoyed that little report of tonight's game, or what people are looking at, and who they think might play and who might not play. If you've enjoyed it, please smash a like on the video. Please tell all your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, don't tell anyone. Keep stum.